Rodney, the brother of assassinated political scholar Dr. Walter Rodney, today entered the witness box at the Presidential Walter Rodney Commission of Inquiry. He testified that he was never involved in the making or collection of explosives or detonation of devices.
At any time, did you have any reason to believe that Dr. Rodney knew that there was explosives in that package?
It never occurred to me.
At any time that night or before, in your interactions with Dr. Walter Rodney, did he indicate to you that you were collecting explosives or an explosive device from Gregory Smith?
No, sir.
As far as you were aware, what was Gregory Smith building or constructing for Dr. Rodney?
As far as I know, it was a walkie-talkie that was being assembled. That is what I understood from Walter, and that's what I understood from Gregory Smith.
At any time then, did you have an understanding from interacting with both persons that it was an explosive device being constructed?
It never occurred to me.
Were you at any time in June 1980 or before involved with Gregory Smith and Dr. Rodney with the making of explosives?
No, sir.
On the night of June 30, 1980, when Dr. Rodney met his demise outside of the Camp Street jail, Donald Rodney was in the front seat of the car and also suffered injuries from the bomb blast. Sergeant Smith was accused of killing Dr. Rodney by concealing the explosive in the device. The brother of the assassinated scholar told the commission that when he arrived at Sergeant Smith's home to uplift the device, he seemed surprised.
And what I collected was in fact something I may not recognize immediately as a walkie-talkie, but that's what I was told it was, because it was electronic circuit, an electronic circuit set on a plywood base.
Yes.
And it had...
I didn't get that setting.
A plywood base. Speak.
Set on a plywood base.
Yes.
And it was partly boxed around. I got some directions from Smith. Part of the circuit had a small knob, and he directed me that it needed to be turned to put into what I would call now a set position. He would have another unit which would remain in his possession.
You're going a little fast and you're holding down your head too.
Keep your voice up. Yes. He would have
another unit which would remain in his possession.
Yes.
The circuit that I had also had a bulb that I'll describe as a flash bulb. And if that bulb flashed when Smith activated the unit, the two units would be synchronized. Now, synchronize is a word I'm using now.
Understood. And when you say the two units, what two units do you refer to?
The one I was given and had in my hand that we were discussing, and one that I had not seen, but he referred to, and I assume he had.
And
now, when you said the bulb flashed, when he activated his unit, that actually happened in your sight?
Mr. Chairman, we're getting the explanation. We're going to that.
That is how it was explained that it would work.
That's how I was being instructed it would work.
Much obliged. And when you say the he who had it in his possession, who do you mean?
Oh, he meaning he, Gregory Smith.
And at all times on that night, what was the belief that you and Walter carried?
Well, I was told I was going to collect a walkie-talkie unit that was being put together, and I was given a circuit.
Can I have a moment?
No. Well, we're sorry to interrupt you, but did he say that he saw the unit that Gregory Smith had?
Never saw.
Or he never saw?
Never saw.
He never saw it, Mr. Chairman. That's what he said. He saw the one that they gave, that he gave to him, that he took.
The one he gave you was wrapped, or you could see the circuit board, everything, so?
Oh yes, you can see the circuit board. It consisted of the circuit that I speak of in a box. Of course, it had a base, and it also had 1, 2, 3 sides. So that, in other words, it had 2 open sides. In a way, one had to hold it, and you could not but not see the circuit.
Donald Rodney said what he collected from Sergeant Smith was a circuit on a plywood base which was boxed around.
Having received this circuitry set, what did you do?
Well, I took it and I went back to the car.
Yes?
But I don't know if, well, no, I don't. I know it will be helpful if I use the configuration of the boxes that I see passing in front of me to explain what I was given.
No, you have a meeting tomorrow.
The witness was asked what he did with it.
What did you do with it?
I took it back to my car.
And was Dr. Rodney in the car?
Yes, he was.
What, if anything, happened after that?
All right, I explained to him what I was told by Smith, and we proceeded up House Street.
And what happened after you proceeded there?
We proceeded up House Street, and we turned into a street called St. Stephen's Street, and then turned into a street called Sussex Street.
Did you do anything when you went Sussex Street? Is that Sussex Street near Adelaide Street?
I can't recall right now sitting here, but it's in the same neighborhood.
And what happened when you reached at Sussex Street?
All right, at Sussex Street, the test was to be carried out. And we waited there for the appointed time. I would have been given a time when the bulb would flash if, in fact, the units were synchronized.
Yes?
I'm sorry. Sussex Street, where the test was to be carried out, how did he arrive at this view that it was at Sussex Street that the test was to be carried out? And how was the appointed time established?
How did you know that you were to go to Sussex Street to do the test, and how did you know of the appointed time?
All right, could I take the appointed time first?
Yes, please.
I was given that time as a number of minutes, approximately, by Gregory Smith.
From the time that you left?
That is correct.
Right.
How many minutes you recall? He said 2 minutes, 3, or you don't recall that?
Oh, I don't recall now, but I would have been given a number of minutes.
Go on.
And
how did you know Sussex Street?
I selected that. In other words, we drove the car. Walter didn't give any directions, as I recall, any specific directions. But we were going down House Street. House Street comes into St. Stephen's Street, which is a T-junction. You can go one way or the other, but you could only go, well, sorry, let me correct that. It's a T-junction, and you could only go one way because it was a one-way street. So I then went that way into St. Stephen's Street, and up to Sussex Street, and then turn right.
And what, if anything, happened then at Sussex Street?
All right, I stopped in Sussex Street.
Yes.
And you were guided by the number of minutes that Mr. Smith had given you when you, at the point when you stopped, or?
Roughly guided. I would not have been looking at my watch, but I had in mind the number of minutes.
Donald Rodney then told the commission that after handing Dr. Rodney the device, there was an explosion shortly after which ended his brother's life.
You have given us that example of the testing at Sussex Street. After that, did you continue to be involved with the procuring of the walkie-talkie set from Gregory Smith?
Well, the next time I was involved was June 13th itself.
June 13th.
Yes.
And could you tell us, relative to the incident of June the 13th, I know it is some time ago, and may I take you to paragraph 31 of your witness statement?
For a moment, you know, I thought that what he was taking us through was the 13th.
No, Mr. Chairman, I prefaced it by saying 2 weeks before.
Yes. Yes, but
Yeah, but he's on June 14th now. That's paragraph 14.
you had omitted to tell us what paragraph you were focusing on, but I now know you are now at 30. The last time you told us of the paragraphs, you were at 23, 24, but we are now at 30.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
But this is now the 5th time that they will be meeting Gregory Smith?
Well, if you count the 5th or 6th time, I would think.
5th or 6th time.
5th or 6th time.
It'll have to
Help
be
me more
counted.
precisely, is the 5th or 6th? You were there, man, help us, if you can.
The first time when I was introduced and the set was not ready. The second time in the vicinity of Water and New Market Street. The third time, I don't think he was around, but that was in North Rumfell.
That's when the lady, the female voice came out
That's
from
correct.
inside, yes?
There's another time.
So that's not a meeting, so we count that out.
All right, well, I'm just
Yes, go on,
accounting
I understand.
for the activities. There was another time when I stopped at Gregory Smith's home. On that occasion, it was to find out what was happening. I didn't expect necessarily to collect a set, but I count that as an activity. And there is possibly a time before that. I'm saying so because when I stopped on what I'm calling the 4th time, I was to check whether he had my number still. So there was some time when the number was communicated. Now, I don't know if I left my number with him the night we met at Water and New Market Street or subsequently. But I'm sure when I stopped by his home, it was to check whether in fact he still had my number.
So that's the 4th time. Go on.
All right. The time we just spoke about, what I call the Sussex Street test, that was the 5th time.
So the June the 13th meeting is the 6th time that you'll be meeting.
Sorry?
The June 13th meeting now, that we're about to hear about, would be the 6th occasion.
I just want to go back one before that and say at Sussex Street, no, I'm saying when I stopped at him, I may have had a contact with him between the North Rumfell occasion and the occasion when I stopped during the daytime. I may have. Because I'm sure why I stopped was to check whether he still had my telephone number. But I can't recall exactly when I gave him the telephone number. So, in other words, When we stopped in at the Sussex Street test, that would have been the 5th or the 6th time.
He said following the incident, a statement was given to attorney Moses Bagwan. However, he could not recall all that was said to the attorney and if the contents of the typed statement corroborated what he said in June 1980.
I recall that on the 13th of June 1980, I was involved in an incident in the evening.
And those events occurred some 34 years ago.
That is true.
Why are you speaking about an incident, man? If he was involved in an incident in which his brother died, let him say that. He's speaking of an incident as though it is not that incident.
Where the...
You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, Mr.
I
Chairman.
promise again to be silent.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, you continue. Where the bomb exploded in your vehicle, killing your brother, Dr. Walter Rodney. Correct?
It was an explosion.
An explosion.
I was involved in an incident in which Walter Rodney was killed after I collected a unit as a walkie-talkie unit. And there was an explosion.
Go on.
Walter died from that explosion.
And shortly thereafter, you gave a statement as to those events on the night of the 13th of June 1980 when there was that explosion.
Shortly after, between the 13th and the 17th, I did give a statement. Yes.
And at the time of the giving of that statement, the occurrences were fresher in your memory than now.
That is true.
You have also annexed that statement as attachment DR2 to your statement before this Commission of Inquiry.
That is true.
To whom did he give the statement? The police?
You gave the statement to Police Officer McCrae, is it?
I give the verbal statement to Moses Bagwan,
Yes.
attorney at law, and Moses Bagwan provided a typed copy of my statement to him.
And to him mean ASP Ignatius McCrae.
Moses Bagwan provided that typed copy. I later on saw a typed copy, when I say later on, 2 days or a day after giving that statement to Moses Bagwan, I saw a typed copy of that statement.
And you...
And was it consistent with the statement you had given Mr. Bagwan? The same statement in substance?
It was generally consistent with the statement I gave to Mr. Moses Bagwan from the glancing I had at the statement. I did not read the statement over.
And you have asked in your witness statement before this commission that this statement that you gave on the 17th of June 1980, you asked that it be read together with your statement before this commission.
You sure you got it from him now that he does not now recall everything that he gave in that statement?
I think I've gotten that before, Mr. Chairman. He said he cannot recall.
I picked up Walter in my car.
What was the car number?
It was PBB 2349. I picked him up in Church Street, outside a school known as St. Rose's High School.
Now, the car that you had at that time, PBB 2349,
That is
what
correct.
type of vehicle was it?
It was a Mazda Capella car,
Was it a two-door or four-door?
four-door vehicle.
So, having picked up Walter Rodney outside St. Rose's High School, how did you come to pick him up outside St. Rose's High School at 7:30?
We had a prior arrangement that I pick him up at that place and at that time.
And that prior arrangement was made when?
It was made the same day at Walter's home early in the afternoon.
And how did you come to be about his home early in the afternoon?
I stopped by on my way home from work.
And when you stopped by, approximately, if you can recall, what time did you stop by earlier on?
It was sometime before 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
4:30.
Sometime before 5 o'clock. And
I think
when,
there's actually a time here for about 4:30.
4:30?
That's correct, go ahead.
Okay.
and when you stopped by, what, if anything, what did you and Walter discuss that led you to pick him up at 7:30?
Walter said that he was going to collect or test, I'm not sure which now,
Yes.
the unit from Gregory Smith.
When you say the unit, what do you mean?
Oh, the walkie-talkie unit
Yes.
from Gregory Smith.
Yes.
If I came along with him, we would be able to use my car, and that would free up his family car, which was to be used by his wife Patricia otherwise. Oh, sorry, which could be used by his wife Patricia otherwise.
So you, thank you. So you had this prior arrangement, and at 7:30, you picked up Dr. Walter Rodney outside St. Rose's High School.
That is
What was the seating arrangement? Where did Dr. Rodney sit, and where did you sit?
It was the two of us in the vehicle. I
Yes.
was driving on the driver's side. He sat on the front passenger side.
So you were both in the vehicle. Where did you go?
I drove the vehicle to Broad Street. I drove the vehicle to House Street, near Russell Street,
Yes.
and I parked on the southern parapet, east.
The southern parapet. Yes, you're saying east?
I parked on the
Southern parapet.
I parked on the eastern parapet.
Of which street?
Sorry, this is correct. I parked in House Street on the southern parapet east of Russell Street.
Having parked there, did you do anything?
I left Walter in the car and I proceeded to the home of Gregory Smith at the corner of Russell and House Street.
Approximately what time did you arrive at the home of Gregory Smith?
Relying on my earlier statement, it was between 7:35 and 7:40.
And you agree,
Yeah.
of course, that you had met Gregory Smith about 6 to 7 times before.
That is correct.
And you also knew him as an electronics and radar technician
That is correct.
and someone who worked in the Ghana Defense Force.
That is also true.
Now, when you met Gregory Smith, tell us, how did he describe himself as it relates to his employment? How did he say he was employed?
He had earlier described himself as a sergeant in the Marine Wing of the Ghana Defense Force.
You're talking about the first time or so, or you're now talking about the 6th or 7th time?
When you first met him, or around before this time, isn't that so?
Before the 13, Gregory Smith described himself as a sergeant in the Marine Wing of the Ghana Defense Force. And that would have been before the 13th, but after the first time I met him.
Now, let me take you a little further down. What was the purpose of your visit to Smith on the night of the 13th?
My purpose was to collect the walkie-talkie from Gregory Smith on behalf of Walter.
Donald Rodney was charged for the possession of an explosive device. The 8th round of public hearings will begin on February 9 and will last for 2 weeks. Assistant Lead Counsel to the Commission, Lachmi Rahamat, summed up the day's proceedings.
We saw come into the commission at today's hearing Donald Rodney. Donald Rodney is Walter Rodney's brother, and from evidence that came to the commission before, we know that Donald Rodney was in the company of Dr. Walter Rodney on the night he died. Donald Rodney started off his evidence by giving us a reflection on his childhood and in relation to intimate stories about Walter Rodney and himself, some life lessons he would have learned from Walter Rodney. And again, having family of Walter Rodney come to the commission, it shows everyone a different side of the man, because a lot of people who read about the works of Walter Rodney and read his writings, they don't have any insight into the type of man he was. Donald Rodney was his younger brother, and when he went away and he brought back toys for Donald Rodney, they would play together. He taught him how to play chess. He even had an impromptu dance lessons. So what we see coming from that aspect of Donald Rodney's testimony, it gives us insight into the family man, into the type of man Walter Rodney really was to those who were closest to him, his family. We also heard for the very first time, I think, evidence coming to the commission in relation to the connection between Walter Rodney and Gregory Smith. We have confirmation through the only living eyewitness telling us that Gregory Smith did indeed exist. Gregory Smith is a man who he didn't just meet one time, but who he would have met with on previous occasions. And I think given the number of occasions Donald Rodney went through that he met with Gregory Smith, we also know for a fact, based on what Donald is saying, that Walter Rodney was getting a walkie-talkie that was being built by Gregory Smith. So the device which was collected on the night of the 13th of June 1980, Donald Rodney told the commission today that he thought that device was a walkie-talkie. He expected that device to be a walkie-talkie. And he said that Walter's expectation also, because when he went to Walter Rodney's house earlier the day on the 13th, and they made the meeting that he was to pick up Walter from in front of St. Rose's High School, it was with the understanding that they were going to go to Gregory Smith's house and pick up this unit, as he referred to it as, which was a walkie-talkie unit, for testing. We also have information coming for the first time, I believe, before the commission in relation to a test run of the circuitry which represented a walkie-talkie on a plyboard. None of this evidence has ever been heard before, and I believe that this is vital information that is coming to the commission through Donald Rodney. And what he tells us is in relation to this first trial run, where he drove on Sussex Street and then stopped before the estimated time, the light flashed, and he indicated on this previous occasion before the 13th of June 1980, when a circuitry on a plyboard which was not completely enclosed was given to him for testing, and he stopped on Sussex Street before the expected time, he saw the light flash, and he, from the indications given to him and the instructions given to him by Gregory Smith, the light flashing would mean that the other device which Gregory Smith was supposed to have at his home, at his end, and the device that he had in his hand were synchronized, and that was evident by the flashing. We also saw today's evidence ending because there was some sort of transmission hiccup, and that's the technical aspect. We do know that these are public hearings. We believe that Donald Rodney's evidence is so important and so vital to the work of the commission that the decision was taken to have the proceedings adjourned Donald Rodney will return to the commission in the February session, and he will continue to tell us, because he still has not completed his recollection of the events of the night of the 13th of June to 1980. And that is very important. So we're at the point in time where he goes up to Gregory Smith's house on the 13th, and he collects this unit. And he told this commission that based on how, and only someone who spoke to Gregory Smith can tell you, he had an inclination from how Gregory Smith asked him where was Rodney, that he was expecting Rodney. Now, this is first-hand information from someone who is saying he met Gregory Smith the night, he collected the unit that was supposed to be the walkie-talkie unit, and he's telling us that based on how Gregory Smith asked him where was Rodney, he formed the opinion and he drew the inference that Gregory Smith was expecting Walter Rodney and not him. We anxiously await the completion of Donald Rodney's evidence and during the February sitting.